The Diabolus Legacy is a fictional crime novel. So it's set in this area, and I guess you'd class it as a thriller, historical fiction. And what I've tried to do with the novel, after doing research in the area with my family, is try to weave the characters that were in this area at the time in 1875 with the fictional characters that I've been able to put into the book, who travelled to this area investigating a murder.
The story opens in March 1875 in Sydney Cove. We meet our main character, Cormag Macleod, working in his capacity as an inspector in the relatively newly formed Sydney Police. Due to an unforeseen series of events, he is sent to investigate a murder in the Allyn River Valley. The murder is particularly heinous, the details gruesome, and he takes with him, reluctantly, a wet behind the ears constable, McDermott, whom he has to look after throughout the duration of the journey. Their journey takes them on a steamer through Newcastle, then up to Clarencetown, and from there to Dungog, and then overland to Allenbrook, where they will stay at Raynella.
The Bird family hails from the Allyn River, and so our ancestors initially came to the Allyn River, settling around Gresford and Allenbrook, and most, I guess famously, our great-grandmother, Nell Bird, ran a wine bar. Well, I guess you'd call it an inn more than a wine bar. She had people staying there, and as the bullock drivers took cedar from the mountains here out and down for export or for use in the colony, she ran this wine bar, and it was called Raynella. But it was a place of so many wonderful stories, and it really is a place that you can get your teeth into as a writer, because it just has that wealth of history around it that's all just so beautifully rich. And so the stories go that the men would bring they would come with their oxen, they would stop there overnight, they would drink rum, play the fiddle, drink wine, be all put to bed in good time, with Nell controlling the crowd if they got too rowdy. And so that's part of the basis of some of the story that I've written, is to try and merge that or weave that beautiful, rich history into a fiction novel.
Being a work of historical fiction, the main characters in the book interact with real figures from the rich history of the region. And as the characters move to Dungog, they encounter Dr. McKinlay, Hannah and Samuel Redman, and Charles Lean, all notable figures in the history of Dungog, and who lived in Dungog in 1875. When Macleod and McDermott move over to Allenbrook, they interact with the characters at Raynella, Nell Bird and Bridget O'Donnell, her mother-in-law. And they also interact with William Boydell, who was the magistrate at the time, Thomas Forrest, the constable at the time, and Thomas Collison, the bush doctor who lived in the district. Moving out to Ravenscross, the Kennys and the Doohans, who are part of this chapter in the book, are real-life figures who lived at the time on the property at Ravenscroft.
There's always a challenge in writing a historical novel, that you have real historical figures and events, and then you have to fit in your fictional figures, and everything has to work together in a timeline to make the story make sense. You know, I did not want to harm any family history by putting people into the book with characteristics that they didn't have. So yeah, all the nasty people, all the people who behave very badly, are all invented and slotted into the historical events of the time. The main character in the book is Cormag Macleod. He's an inspector in the Sydney Cove in 1875. Now, he's a deeply flawed, complex character, and as we see him evolve through the book, we learn that he's an alcoholic, he's a functioning alcoholic. He is an ex-soldier, so he was with the 93rd Highlanders in the Crimean War, and ended up fighting with them in Lucknow in India, and was injured, losing his sight almost in his right eye, and was discharged from the army. And he ends up in the police force in Victorian London, where he investigates murders and becomes an effective policeman. He suffered his own personal losses. What we have is a man who's clinging on to who he was. So he's really clinging on to what he knows is good of him, but there's not much of that left.
Notable buildings in the district of the Allyn River Valley form the backdrop to many of the scenes in the book. St Mary on Allyn forms a central part of the book, with much of the action taking place at this beautiful old church. In addition, Raynella and the Ravenscross property still exist and also form central parts of the narrative. In Dungog, the Settlers' Arms and the Redmond Cottage, formerly the Dungog Inn, are also represented in the novel.
Many crime stories that you read have a church and a murder involved, so it has that. And this murder is particularly gruesome, and the sacrilege of having it happen on a church step is even more, I guess, shocking in the context of the book. So that's why I've chosen to have the first murder victim is found on the doorstep of this church, St Mary on Allyn. Although it's historical fiction, I really hope the people of this area in the Allyn River Valley can take this as something that they can read and show to other people with pride, that documents in a certain way some of the wonderful history of this region.